There's been a lot of discussion within the community as of late about the future of One Piece and other topics that range from Joyboi, destiny, freedom, a possible prophecy that may or may not exist a la Naruto, and most importantly, Luffy's role in all of that. This is not surprising since Oda has been very aggressive in pushing the idea of Luffy being special, recently even hinting at the Gomu Gomu no Mi to hold some sort of important significance. Yet, what actually sparked the creation of the video was the most recent Brago stream.
Are you concerned that Luffy's gonna become too special?
It somewhat clashes with the themes of freedom for me.
Yes, exactly.
Whoa, this don't
That's
clash with
biased.
freedom.
No, and
I just
that's
don't like
exactly
the
what
way
I'm
that he's,
saying.
Why does it? Okay.
Maybe it doesn't. Maybe
How?
Because if he has a preordained, destined path,
Yeah.
then his whole thing about I'm free to do whatever I want isn't true, and that just
ironic.
makes it doesn't make One Piece One Piece.
These are all great topics to discuss for sure, and if you've watched that stream, you know that everyone seems to have their own interpretations, concerns, and hopes for the way Oda will tackle all these concepts. I, as one does, would like to approach the discussion from a perspective that I haven't seen fully explained yet, and that is from a writing perspective. Now, a little disclaimer, while I was editing this video, wait, why did I say Brago? No, BDA Law, the bastard, released a video featuring Joyboi where they address some of these issues, the same ones I'm aiming to discuss here. With that said, and despite agreeing with the majority of the points that were made, I feel like there was a lot left on the table since the collab was heavily focused on showcasing Joyboi's perspective on the matter. Plus, the topic of destiny is extremely nuanced, so I decided to continue my project. And then, while I was rendering the first version of the video, the reverie happened and of course these topics were also discussed. In my defense, I tweeted this beforehand. Yeah, that will show him. No, but in all honesty, my biggest fear was that my video would become obsolete, but after hearing some clashing points of view, it actually solidified my resolve of sharing my thoughts on the subject. Okay, end of disclaimer, let's get to the video. I would like to start by addressing some misconceptions regarding prophecy and the role of the Chosen One. People have been burned before. Yes, I understand that completely. I was also a big fan of Naruto, believe me. And yes, Naruto became the child of prophecy, the destined hero, the chosen one. However, those are not the reasons why Naruto became a poorly written series near the end. So, in very simplistic terms, because this is not a Naruto video, I promise, Naruto being revealed as the most special person destined to save the ninja world is a direct contradiction to a lot of the themes Kishimoto had established earlier in the story. Using Naruto as a blueprint, the fans are now fearing the same will happen to Luffy and consequently One Piece. Frankly, these are valid concerns, although I believe people are coming at it from the wrong angle. The issue doesn't lie in the concepts themselves, but in the way the author might implement them in the story. Series like Avatar: The Last Airbender or the Star Wars movies, at least the first 6, are just a few good examples of stories that execute these ideas in ways that, instead of compromising the narrative or the individual journey of the main characters, they enhance it, they add to it. Which begs the question, as an author, how do you make this work? What is the secret ingredient? Well, actually, it's impossible to narrow it down to just one thing. In fact, it's a combination of all the components necessary to tell a story. So we're talking character writing, plot writing, world building, themes, the other stuff. Despite that, I would like to dissect an aspect of world building that plays an extremely important role in all of this. It's more of a definition really. Nonetheless, I think this definition will be fundamental when it comes to the future of the series, and that is the definition of destiny. Now, like most words, destiny, also referred to as fate, can have multiple meanings, which, if we think about it, allows for great creative freedom when crafting complex stories such as One Piece. Ultimately, it will all come down to Oda's own interpretation of what destiny is, of what it means. And now you're wondering, okay, but what kind of options does he have? I'm glad you asked. When pulling from every piece of fiction that I've consumed, I believe there's 3 different routes, 3 distinctive definitions of destiny that Oda could implement in the setting of One Piece. All 3 paths present unique outcomes, each with a number of pros and cons, but at the end of the day, taking in consideration the writing of the series thus far, one of these will stand above the rest as the preferable route. Without further ado, I present to you scenario number 1. The simplest one to explain and the most commonly used in fiction, at least from my perspective, is the path that sees destiny as a deterministic future. Every single thing that happened in the past was meant to happen the way it did, no deviation whatsoever. At the same time, every single thing that will happen in the future has also been set in stone, perhaps since the inception of the universe. Who knows? Point is, the foreseeable future is completely unavoidable and preordained. If we think in metaphysical terms, some sort of external supernatural force is in control. You can call it fate, causality, God, the will of destiny. It really doesn't matter what we call it since it's usually an abstract concept. Determinism, I believe, works best in time travel movies where the event the characters are trying to prevent at all cost was actually caused by them in the first place, and by going back in time they complete the circle, the so-called self-fulfilling prophecy. I also believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've only read the series once, this is essentially the path that Kishimoto chose for Naruto. There's a prophecy stating that the chosen one will save the ninja world, Naruto is that child and so he does, destiny fulfilled. Knowing that Naruto can't fail negatively impacts the stakes of the story you're trying to tell, and I think this is what the majority of One Piece fans fear the most. Moreover, in this scenario, Luffy is the destined child. There was never the option of it being anyone else. This would automatically mean that free will and character agency are but illusions, they don't really exist. If you hear anyone saying that free will has been established in One Piece at any point, that person is being disingenuous. We don't know this for a fact, and that's where the trepidation within the fandom is coming from. I cannot deny that in the story we have people like Luffy who constantly talks about freedom, and we have Capone hinting that everyone has the power to change their future. And then we have Madame Shirley, whose powers of foresight are so incredibly accurate that she never saw a future event that didn't happen, which would totally be in line with determinism. But it doesn't stop there. We can find characters in the story talking about promises to be completed by a special someone, a second coming of the figure called Joyboi, random occurrences that work in our hero's favor, among many other examples. What I'm trying to say here is, from an observant point of view, Oda has been sending us mixed signals, and for the sake of objectivity, I won't dismiss the storytelling possibilities that one might consider bad, no matter how much faith the fans place in Oda. Truth be told, choosing this definition would be catastrophic from a writing standpoint because it would unequivocally go against the thematic bedrock of the series, that being freedom, a contradiction in every sense of the word. In addition, it would undermine Luffy's accomplishments significantly, making you question if anything was ever truly earned. Now, it's not all bad. Well, it's pretty bad, but there's one potential positive that could come out of this, and that is Luffy's character development. I have seen a lot of people wishing at some point in the narrative, maybe when the One Piece is found, that Luffy goes through a meaningful character arc. Just a moment of introspection prompted by learning the truth of the world. And to be honest, I want this as well, to have Oda give some depth to Luffy that would lead to growth for the character. Well, if we add to that, Luffy finding out that he's been part of some cosmic plan, that his actions and his decisions are not entirely his own, that he is not a free man, these are all the ingredients for great character writing. And we as fans could get a few 10 out of 10 chapters from this. Unfortunately, that's what it ends, because where do you go from there? What do you do next? I'll tell you, nothing, due to the fact that in this scenario there's no escape from one's fate. Within the context of One Piece, this would come across a bit nihilistic since determinism denies the existence of individual freedom. And by the way, I'm not saying Oda can have a quote-unquote good ending to the series, especially if what's meant to happen is Luffy saving and uniting the world by defeating the world government. Whoa, there's a lot of irony in that sentence. Oda can even make it bittersweet, with Luffy accepting his role as the Chosen One and providing the entire world with the same illusion of freedom that he always believed real. That's kinda depressing though, and for that reason I'm officially calling this the nightmare scenario. Having said that, I will never undersell the power of passion, because I've already seen people trying to defend this notion of destiny. The argument goes something like, there is no difference between Luffy becoming the ultimate hero of the world because it was preordained, and Oda deciding when formulating the story that he wanted his main character to save the world by the end of it. I find this counter extremely misguided. Yes, there is a big difference between the two, since the first process occurs inside the story world and the second occurs outside of it. What I mean by this is that Luffy succeeding because in-universe a supernatural power dictated it is not the same as him succeeding because of a meta decision made by the author. The author is not the alleged god in the universe of their story. That being would still be a fictional creation. Oda could execute his creativity and his intention to make Luffy a hero in an infinite manner of ways, but in this hypothetical scenario, he would choose determinism, which I've explained at length all the downsides of it. At the end of the day, when the characters start discussing if they have free will or not, it becomes their reality. It affects them. Okay, I hope I made that point clear. Let's move on to the next scenario. Our second definition sees destiny as a predeterministic future. And now you're like, what's the difference? Yes. I will admit, when it came to naming these scenarios, it was just a case of semantics, but that's irrelevant really. What matters to me is that you understand my explanation, so let's get to it. Every intricate aspect of this path is pretty much the same as the one before. Once again, we run into the same problems like predetermined events that can't be changed, no free will, Luffy was always the chosen one, destined to save the world from the start, the whole shebang. However, there's two major differences this time. I've mentioned earlier that determinism implies the existence of an unknown supernatural power responsible for predetermining everything. Well, in this version, this so-called predeterministic source is revealed to the characters. In essence, it becomes somewhat tangible, and that's our first big change. The second one is, when they make this discovery, they are confronted with a crucial choice, either to accept the fate planned for them or to break from it, and they would naturally choose the latter. By doing so, our main characters would gain free will, as well as providing it to the rest of the world. Needless to say, this action would put an end to fixed events and give way to a malleable future. I believe The Matrix would be a fine comparison to make here, with Neo finding a way to free humanity from the control of the machines. Also, there's a Marvel product that you can watch right now that deals with this exact scenario. Don't want to mention what it is to avoid spoilers. Alright, now, what are the positives by going this route? I mean, imagine if there's a superior power at work helping Luffy throughout his journey, this could potentially create an in-universe explanation for all the plot armor, conveniences, contrivances, overall lucky circumstances that favor him. And believe me, I've seen people on Twitter who would kill for this scenario to be true. The reason given is that Oda keeps hitting us in the head with all these mentions of Luffy being exceedingly lucky, which leads people to assume this has to be a future plot point. Furthermore, Luffy's character introspection that I brought up during the previous section would naturally occur in this version as well. Once again, we would witness Luffy doubting every single decision he ever made, every single accomplishment, every single moment of his journey. Finding out that you've been a puppet your entire life would be crushing for anyone, but especially for someone who believes in freedom as much as Luffy. Organically, Luffy would feel like a fraud, no? I mean, would he even want to become Pirate King at that point? Food for thought. Lastly, unlike the first scenario, near the end the characters do escape their fate and attain free will. which results in you having all the ingredients to make an amazing final arc with lots of salty steaks. Speaking of steaks, this brings us to the major negative of choosing this path. Until the crucial moment in the story when Luffy obtains free will, so we're talking at the 90 to 95% mark, the stakes would get irreparably damaged. And I don't think the same people who are clamoring for this scenario fully understand how harmful this would be from a writing standpoint. Basically, everything told to us until this point would be a complete lie, like Luffy being portrayed as the underdog when in reality he never was, Luffy being portrayed as lucky when in reality it's all been an act of providence, Luffy being portrayed as a hard worker when in reality he only succeeds thanks to the advantages provided to him, Luffy being portrayed as adaptable when in reality it's the world being manipulated to adapt to Luffy. You get the picture here, right? I mean, you can try to sell me Luffy's achievements as being a product of grind, determination, and a never say die attitude, but the system is simply rigged in Luffy's favor from the start. No one stands a real chance against the Chosen One because he simply cannot fail. And sure, emotional stakes still remain intact, and other characters like Ace and Whitebeard who didn't share Luffy's quote-unquote divine protection can still die, yet when you think about it, there wasn't even a possibility of it happening any other way. Both success and failure become much more meaningful when the characters have freedom of choice and when they have to deal with the consequences of those choices. I mean, the circumstances of these deaths that I just mentioned would drastically change in this scenario. No, Ace didn't die because he made a mistake, but because he was compelled to. That's the thing, he had no agency, no free will. You can say to me, no, it's in his character to make the choice to fight Akainu or to protect Luffy for that matter. But is it? I mean, how can you be sure? No, think about it, if events can be manipulated, why can't people? I'm sure the characters believe they have a will of their own, but how can you distinguish your thoughts from the will of God? Quite an existential problem, isn't it? Well, that's predeterminism. So, in conclusion, this entire scenario is far beneath ideal, not when you could choose one so much better. Which brings us to the promised land, metaphorically. I was watching this crappy animated show on Netflix the other day, and no, it wasn't Record of Ragnarok or whatever that monstrosity is. No, I'm referring to another series called Blood of Zeus. Now, despite not being very good, it did have one bright spot that stuck with me, one scene in particular. So, just some very quick context for what you're about to see. Heron, the protagonist and son of Zeus, gets summoned by the three Fate sisters and, well, this happens.
I never believed in fate.
What do you believe in?
Free will.
Quite a conundrum. But the reason why I'm showing you this is because of their response.
Free will and fate coexist.
Yes, and now you're asking.
How?
Okay, I'll take it from here. What I'm about to explain to you is what the literal personifications of fate describe in the rest of the scene, only I'm going to use One Piece references. Alright, it goes something like this. So let's say, for example, Madame Shirley sees Luffy's future and tells him, "Listen Luffy, you're destined to go to Wano and lose a fight to Kaido the first time you see him." To which Luffy responds, "We will see about that." Then he goes to Wano, and during Act 1 he witnesses Kaido seemingly kill the rest of the Straw Hats. You remember this scene, right? Now, Luffy's immediate reaction of course is to attack Kaido, but in my version of events, Luffy thinks, if just for a split second, on what Madame Shirley told him before, and instead of attacking, Luffy controls his anger and calms down. Kaido then leaves, and Luffy searches for his crew to find them alive and well. Essentially, what Luffy did was change the future, or in other words, his fate. And that's our third and final definition of the word destiny, the one where destiny is defined as only a potential future. Naturally, this becomes possible because free will exists from the start. Madame Shirley's foresight ability doesn't just allow her to take a peek through the current timeline, but it also gives her the opportunity to intervene by giving that information away, consequently creating a branching timeline. That's her employing her free will as well as Luffy by choosing to listen, and I cannot believe I unironically just said Luffy chose to listen to someone else, but such is life. What I'm trying to get at is that the characters make their own destiny. They're in full control of their actions, they have agency. Now, the best in-story reference anyone could use to attack this position would be that it was established that all Madame Shirley's predictions came true, no exception. At the same time, from what we know, every single prediction she made has been about big events in history. Did she try to stop those? Could she have stopped those even if she had tried? I mean, I'm not sure, but I have my doubts. What I do know is that it really doesn't matter in this argument since I'm only using Madame Shirley as proof of concept. Moreover, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Hawkins' abilities into the discussion. His cards allow him to see the probability of something happening in the future, which, again, it's good supporting evidence of no event being completely set in stone. And I guess that covers the basics on how free will can work alongside the concept of destiny. Then, with free will in the picture, the issue we had before about contradicting the central theme of the story disappears. Having the freedom to live your life as you see fit is one of the major lessons of One Piece. Luffy, for instance, teaches us that you should be who you want to be and do what you want to do. Without individual freedom, One Piece crumbles, and this is only truly achieved if Oda follows this path. Furthermore, throughout the video I talked multiple times about stakes and how important they are to establish when you're crafting a story. As a writer, when writing conflict of any kind, you gotta constantly ask yourself what your characters stand to gain and what they stand to lose, weighing the risk and the reward, always. When Luffy fights anyone, you want to feel the danger, you want to have that doubt in your mind, is he going to pull through? That fear of failure is very powerful, not just for the audience, but for the characters. That's how you create tension, drama, stakes. Without free will, this would be very hard to achieve. Not saying impossible, just very, very tough. And this is why I consider this one of the main factors that makes this third scenario the most appealing from a writing standpoint. The two examples from my introduction, Avatar: The Last Airbender and Star Wars, they both follow this philosophy. Aang, the protagonist, is the Avatar, the de facto chosen one of that universe, the only one capable of mastering all the elements and bring peace to the world. Yet, with all that latent ability, he's never destined to win in the end. Avatar is essentially a story about a kid dealing with all the expectations of being special. Anakin Skywalker has a similar struggle to Aang. The major difference, of course, is the existence of the prophecy that the Chosen One will bring balance to the Force. People to this day are still debating if Anakin did that or not, but that becomes irrelevant when we learn that, according to Jedi lore, the future is always in motion. Prophecies and other visions of the future can be misinterpreted, and that implies free will. Which brings us back to One Piece, to the topic everyone seems to be apprehensive about. I'm speaking of course of One Piece's version of the Chosen One, the reincarnation of Joyboi, and the possibility of it being Luffy. I would say at this point a given. But here's the thing, and I mentioned this before, there's nothing inherently bad about the concept itself because it can function in storytelling without undermining the individual efforts of the quote-unquote messiah figure if handled with care. And that's always the key, execution, but that's my point. If Oda were to pick this definition of destiny, I believe he has all the tools at his disposal to write something good, something that can survive scrutiny. Therefore, allow me to present to you how I could see this playing out. This will feel like a tangent, but bear with me. So let's say, hypothetically, during the Void Century, at the end of the war between the Ancient Kingdom and the world government, Joyboi accepted a crucial mission. Instead of going down fighting with the rest of his countrymen, he is tasked by the leaders of the kingdom to save what's left of their heritage. For that purpose, alongside his daughter and a few friends, they gather the 3 remaining ancient weapons, their most prominent devil fruits, and their biggest treasure. And with those in hand, they escape the ancient kingdom towards exile. Now declared the world's most dangerous criminal, Joyboi started looking for a way to ensure that the injustice perpetrated by the world government wouldn't go unpunished. Unfortunately for Joyboi, he didn't have much time left to live since he had contracted a genetic disease that ran in his family. But that didn't stop Joyboi from preparing the future generations for the war to come. You see, the emotional trauma of losing his home and witnessing the death of countless comrades led Joyboi to unlock an ability. He developed an extremely advanced form of observation haki, even more advanced than Madame Shirley's. Joyboi essentially became the first being capable of perceiving events in the future beyond his lifespan. With the little time he had left, he used his ability to study cause and effect throughout time, analyzing what actions to take in the present in order to reach a certain outcome in the future. That's when he decided to place the ancient weapons in strategic locations and hide the ancient kingdom's national treasure, the One Piece, on a certain secret island. Afterwards, he needed a way to communicate with his people across time to make sure their descendants would have the instructions necessary to accomplish the goal of taking down the world government. It was then that he met with the Kozuki and commissioned the creation of the poneglyphs. At the end of his rope, he distributed the devil fruits among the group of survivors and gave them his last instructions, for them to scatter across the globe, that way it would improve their odds of survival. Joyboi's people, having now adopted the initial D in their names, respected his final wishes, believing it was the best way to preserve their cultural heritage. It was only then that Joyboi finally saw it. In a distant future, one of his descendants, a man with a D in his name, wearing a straw hat, maybe, finds the One Piece and uses the ancient weapons to wage war against the world government, destroying the organization in the process. Thus began the prophecy of Joyboi. So wait, is it called the prophecy of Joyboi because Joyboi came up with it, or because his descendant would become a symbolic representation of himself? Yes. And there you have it, my theory. But why go through all the trouble of making this up? Simply because I believe Oda's version of the events I just described is what Luffy will learn when he finds the One Piece. He will discover that he's part of a plan larger than himself, that the journey he thought was unique to him was actually planned out by Joyboi a long time ago, that he is the chosen one that Joyboi saw in his vision. Learning all of this should trigger a meaningful character arc for Luffy. And you've heard me speak about this a couple times now, this comes as no shock. So here's another reason why I think this route would be far superior to the other ones. The free will scenario is the only one that grants Oda the opportunity to make Luffy question himself without taking the credit away from him. Luffy's will is his own. No one forced Luffy to do anything like setting out to sea or to make friends or to train, and certainly no one fought his battles for him. Luffy's individual efforts, struggles, and achievements belong to him. And when I say that Luffy is the chosen one from Joyboi's prophecy, I don't mean that he was born that way, he became that way. That's the key difference. The man from Joyboi's vision could easily have been Roger, Luffy's child, Luffy's grandchild, no one related to them in the slightest, I mean, still in the family tree of course. At the end of the day, it is Luffy because he is the one who will get the job done. Simple as that. With that said, I haven't spoken about how Oda could make Luffy question himself, which would be an essential part of his development. I know I said before that Luffy wasn't born the chosen one, but he was born special. For that same reason, I would have Luffy acknowledge just how lucky and special he truly is. That he had a leg up on other people because of all the advantages provided by Joyboi. Brago put it best when he said,
Luffy being the son of Dragon,
Nah.
the grandson of Garp,
Nah, that's cool.
being
That's
Shanks being his benefactor, getting Roger's hat.
Oh, wait, pause right there. Pause right there. I feel like if it turns out that this hat is also something special,
It is special.
Special.
Partly.
But why stop there when we can go even further? He was also born with Conqueror's Haki and the voice of all things. He befriended all the right people, including Robin, who can read the poneglyphs, and now we find out that Luffy has an important devil fruit.
Let's say Luffy's fruit is one of the 5 holy fruits or some shit like that.
What five holy fruits?
Hold on.
Yo, bro, what the five?
All these advantages are part of the reason why Luffy got this far, where others fell behind. Realizing all this should affect Luffy. It should bother him a bit, no? At least I hope so. You could even have Luffy wishing he could start his journey all over again without any edge, just to see how far he would go, if he could reach the top that he now stands on. But that's not possible, and Luffy, now more matured, would understand that completely. Luffy can't control that he was born at the right time, that he had the right power set, that he met the right people. In the same vein, he can't control that he was lucky when Roger wasn't. His development would culminate with him accepting Joyboi's legacy, believing that he owes it to those who came before him, to those who paved the way, to see Joyboi's plan through. However, we got to keep in mind that Joyboi's prophecy only shows a potential future. In my version of events, Joyboi saw the Destined One destroying the world government. Okay, what if this is where Luffy shows his individuality? What if he doesn't destroy the world government, but instead reforms it? I mean, not Luffy directly, that would be completely out of character. No, but what if it tasks Kobe, Smoker, Fujitora, Garp if he's still around, to reconstruct the Marines, while Vivi, Rebecca, Shirahoshi take care of the political side? I think this would make for a good progression of events. Alright, now, I've been focusing so far on the positive aspects that come with this particular definition of destiny. Well, are there any negatives though? I count one, at least. Unlike predeterminism, there's no built-in explanation for any deficiency in Oda's writing. What I mean by this is that we can't ignore that a bubble still fell on Luffy when he fought Crocodile that second time. Those instances of general conveniences, contrivances, plot armor, inconsistencies and power scaling, among many other stuff, are just what they are: poor writing choices. A failure on Oda's part to find more organic ways for the story to progress the way he intended. They happened in the past, they are happening in the present, and they will most likely happen in the future, unfortunately. And as fans, I believe we would be doing a disservice to the series if we didn't point them out, in a civil manner preferably. After all, deep down, we all have the same agenda, the only agenda that truly matters, and that is, we wish One Piece to be the best series it can possibly be. And that pretty much covers everything, I think. So, in review, the 3 possible notions of destiny are determinism, predeterminism, and potentiality. Determinism denies the existence of free will, predeterminism allows the possibility for free will to be attained, and potentiality is built on the foundation of free will. From my perspective, the third definition is the one that complements One Piece's writing the best, but ultimately it will be up to Oda to make that definite choice. Considering that, the fandom that has been with the series for decades is now growing worried that One Piece will follow the trend of other shonens that saw a decline in quality towards the end of their run. The fact is, people don't want their investment to go to waste. One Piece is getting more and more divisive by the day because Oda is reaching the point of the story where he actually has to commit to an idea and start explaining how the world of One Piece really works. The room for speculation and theories is narrowing down, which means that when Oda makes a creative choice, it might cause extreme reactions within the fandom. Moreover, the time when you said, well, we will see how this plays out has arrived, and truth is, Oda will not be able to satisfy everyone given the highest of expectations people place on him and on the series. But hey, there's no way I know this to be certain. As far as I'm concerned, nothing is set in stone. All I can do, as any other One Piece fan, is patiently wait for answers. Although now that I think about it, will Oda even address any of this stuff? Oh shit. You know, perhaps I've been a bit too harsh on Karakuri in the past. Can you imagine a scene where Brule asks him, "Hey brother, why didn't you use your mochi abilities against Straw Hat Luffy for the majority of your fight with him?" To which he would respond, "Well, Brule, because God wouldn't let me." That bitch.